You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Explainability is the natural complement to transparency, ensuring that people can interpret how an AI system arrives at its conclusions. While transparency may tell us the what of a model, its architecture, data, and design explainability provides the how and why. For example, if a bank's AI system denies a loan application, explainability ensures the applicant can see whether the decision was based primarily on credit history, income, or other relevant factors. This interpretability matters because it allows individuals to contest or improve outcomes rather than being subject to opaque judgments. Explainability also supports trust by reducing fear of hidden agendas or unfair treatment. Importantly, explanations must be accessible, tailored to the needs of different audiences, from developers and regulators to everyday users. It is not enough for a system to be technically sound. It must also be communicable in human terms. Trust in AI depends not only on accuracy, but also on confidence that decisions are made in ways that are visible and understandable. Without transparency and explainability, even the most sophisticated models may struggle to gain acceptance. In healthcare, for instance, patients may be reluctant to accept AI-driven diagnoses unless doctors can explain how the system reached its conclusion. In finance, regulators require institutions to justify credit decisions, ensuring that algorithms comply with anti-discrimination laws. Trust emerges when users believe they are not subject to arbitrary or inscrutable systems, but to processes that can be examined, questioned, and justified. Explainability, therefore, is as much about building relationships as it is about technical interpretation. It reassures people that AI is not an untouchable authority, but a tool subject to human oversight and ethical responsibility. A major challenge in pursuing transparency is the trade-off with performance, particularly in complex systems such as deep learning. Models with many layers of computation can achieve remarkable accuracy but often lack interpretability. For example, a deep neural network may outperform simpler models in detecting cancer from medical images, but provide little insight into which features of the image informed its decision. Conversely, simpler models like decision trees may be easier to explain but less powerful in handling complex data. This creates a tension. Should developers prioritize accuracy or interpretability? In practice, the balance depends on context. In life-or-death scenarios, explainability may outweigh raw performance, while in low-stakes applications, accuracy may dominate. The trade-off highlights the need for nuanced approaches, recognizing that explainability and performance are not always aligned, but must be balanced thoughtfully. Black box models are those that achieve high performance, but provide minimal insight into their reasoning processes. Deep learning systems are the most well-known examples, producing outputs that can be extraordinarily accurate yet remain opaque to users and even their creators. For instance, an AI that recommends investments might base its decisions on subtle correlations across thousands of variables, leaving investors unsure which factors carried the most weight. Black box models raise ethical and regulatory questions. How can stakeholders trust systems that cannot explain themselves? In contexts where accountability is crucial, reliance on black box models risks undermining fairness and legitimacy. While they may drive innovation, they also highlight the limitations of pursuing performance without parallel commitments to interpretability. Black box models illustrate both the promise and the peril of AI. Making explainability more than just a technical preference, it becomes a moral necessity. In contrast, white box models prioritize interpretability, offering clear and understandable reasoning behind their predictions. Examples include linear regression, decision trees, and rule-based systems, where the contribution of each variable can be traced and explained. For instance, A decision tree evaluating loan applications might show that income level, employment history, and debt ratio determine the outcome, with clear thresholds visible at each step. While these models may not always match the accuracy of deep learning in complex domains, they offer clarity that builds trust. White box approaches are especially valuable in regulated industries, where decisions must be justified to auditors, regulators, or the public. They serve as reminders that transparency can sometimes be achieved not through post-hoc explanations, but by designing models that are inherently interpretable. In doing so, they keep decision-making accessible to both experts and non-specialists alike. Post-hoc explainability represents a compromise for situations where high-performing black box models are necessary, but must still be interpretable. These tools provide insights after training, offering windows into the decision-making process without altering the underlying model. For example, saliency maps can highlight which parts of an image influenced a classification, while textual explanations may describe the most influential features behind a decision. Although these interpretations may not capture the full complexity of the model, they offer approximations that help bridge the gap between opacity and understanding. Post-hoc methods have become essential in industries where deep learning is too powerful to ignore but too opaque to use without explanation. They allow organizations to benefit from advanced performance while still meeting ethical, regulatory, and public expectations for transparency. Feature importance methods provide one of the most widely used approaches to post-hoc explainability. These techniques identify which variables contributed most strongly to predictions, offering a sense of how decisions are shaped. In a medical diagnosis model, for example, feature importance might reveal that certain lab results or family history carry greater weight than demographic factors. This information reassures stakeholders that decisions align with relevant evidence rather than arbitrary or biased inputs. Feature importance also helps developers refine models by highlighting variables that may introduce unwanted bias or redundancy. By offering a ranked understanding of what drives predictions, these methods make opaque systems more interpretable. They do not solve all transparency challenges, but provide a practical tool for aligning AI decisions with fairness, accountability, and human expectations of clarity. Local explanations focus on clarifying individual predictions rather than overall system behavior. Techniques such as LIME and SHAP create simplified models around a single case, showing how different features contributed to that specific outcome. For instance, if an AI system denies a mortgage application, a local explanation could reveal that high debt levels and short credit history were the main reasons. This helps individuals understand and respond to decisions that directly affect them, providing both clarity and recourse. Local explanations are especially valuable in high-stakes domains like healthcare, where patients need to know why a diagnosis was given, or in criminal justice, where defendants deserve insight into risk assessments. By humanizing the outputs of complex systems, local explanations help bridge the gap between statistical reasoning and personal accountability. Global explanations provide a complementary perspective by summarizing the overall behavior of an AI system. Instead of focusing on single predictions, they reveal general patterns such as which features are consistently most influential or how inputs interact across the dataset. For example, a global explanation of a hiring algorithm might show that education and years of experience have stronger overall influence than geographic location. These summaries are especially useful for regulators, auditors, and managers who need to evaluate systemic fairness rather than individual cases. Global explanations ensure that stakeholders can assess not just the outputs, but also the tendencies of a model, enabling oversight at the organizational or societal level. Together with local explanations, they provide a comprehensive picture of AI behavior, from personal outcomes to system-wide trends. Visualization enhances explainability by turning abstract data into tangible, intuitive insights. Graphs, charts, and heat maps allow stakeholders to see relationships and influences visually, reducing the complexity of technical explanations. For example, in image recognition, heat maps can highlight which areas of an X-ray most influenced a medical diagnosis, helping doctors connect AI outputs with their own expertise. Visualization tools also help non-technical stakeholders engage with AI systems, making interpretability accessible to broader audiences such as regulators, business leaders, or the public. By transforming complex models into understandable visuals, AI developers can foster dialogue and build trust. Visualization demonstrates that explainability is not only about accuracy but also about communication, ensuring that insights are shared in forms that are meaningful and usable across contexts. Documentation practices provide a structured way to institutionalize transparency and explainability. Tools like model cards, datasheets, and system fact sheets detail how datasets were collected, what models are designed to do, and where they may fall short. For instance, a model card for a speech recognition system might disclose that performance is weaker for certain accents, ensuring users understand limitations before deployment. These practices formalize accountability, turning transparency into a record rather than an ad hoc disclosure. Documentation also supports collaboration across teams, allowing developers, auditors, and regulators to share a common understanding of how systems operate. By embedding explainability into artifacts that accompany models, organizations create durable records that support trust, oversight, and ethical deployment. Explainability also strengthens accountability by supporting compliance, audits, and governance structures. In regulated industries, organizations must often demonstrate not only that decisions are accurate, but also that they are fair, legal, and understandable. For example, in finance, explainable models help institutions comply with anti-discrimination laws by showing that lending decisions are based on legitimate factors rather than hidden biases. Auditors benefit from clear explanations when reviewing systems for compliance, while governance boards rely on interpretability to guide strategic oversight. Explainability therefore becomes a practical necessity for meeting legal and institutional standards. It ensures that AI does not operate in isolation but within frameworks of responsibility and oversight that extend beyond technical performance into organizational accountability. The risks of opaque AI become starkly visible when errors or biases cannot be explained. Imagine a medical AI that misdiagnoses a patient without being able to justify its reasoning. Even if the mistake is rare, its lack of explainability undermines trust in the entire system. Similarly, in hiring or criminal justice, opaque decisions can lead to legal disputes and reputational damage if organizations cannot demonstrate fairness or consistency. These risks are not hypothetical. They have already emerged in high-profile failures where lack of transparency eroded public trust. Opaque AI systems magnify harm because they deny opportunities for correction, oversight, or contestation. In this way, lack of explainability transforms mistakes from manageable errors into crises of legitimacy, reinforcing why transparency is not just desirable, but essential for responsible AI. Public expectations of explainability have grown rapidly as AI becomes more embedded in daily life. Users increasingly demand to know why recommendations appear on streaming platforms, why their credit scores change, or why smart assistants respond in certain ways. Beyond consumers, regulators and civil society organizations press for greater openness to ensure fairness and accountability. These expectations reflect a cultural shift. AI is no longer seen as a novelty, but as infrastructure shaping opportunities and experiences. Trust in this infrastructure depends on transparency. Companies that fail to provide explanations risk backlash, regulatory penalties, and erosion of public confidence. Meeting these expectations requires more than technical fixes. It demands a cultural commitment to openness and accountability that aligns AI development with broader societal values. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Explainability in healthcare is one of the clearest examples of why interpretability is not just helpful but absolutely necessary. When doctors use AI to assist in diagnosing illnesses or recommending treatments, they need to understand the reasoning behind the system's outputs. A model that correctly identifies cancer from an X-ray may impress with its accuracy, but if it cannot show which features of the image triggered the diagnosis, clinicians are left with uncertainty. Without explainability, physicians cannot confidently integrate AI advice with their own expertise, nor can they explain results to patients who demand clarity about their care. In a field where decisions directly affect human lives, transparency is a matter of patient safety, not convenience. Healthcare shows that AI's role is not to replace human judgment but to augment it, and explainability is the bridge that makes collaboration possible. In finance, explainability is tied directly to regulation, fairness, and consumer rights. Banks and lenders use AI to evaluate creditworthiness, detect fraud, and guide investments, but laws require that such decisions be explainable. For example, when a loan is denied, applicants have a legal right to know why, whether due to debt ratio, repayment history, or insufficient income. Opaque models cannot meet these obligations, creating legal and reputational risks for institutions. Regulators also require transparency to ensure that models do not discriminate against protected groups. This makes explainability not just a technical feature, but a compliance mandate in financial services. At the same time, explainability enhances consumer trust, reassuring customers that their financial futures are not being decided by inscrutable machines. In finance, transparency is both a shield against liability and a driver of confidence in automated systems. Legal and government systems provide another domain where explainability is critical, because decisions often carry weighty consequences for individuals and society. Predictive tools used in courts, for example, may assess the likelihood of recidivism or recommend sentencing guidelines. If these systems lack transparency, they risk undermining public trust in justice by producing outcomes that appear arbitrary or biased. Government use of AI in areas such as benefits allocation, policing, or immigration decisions must also be explainable, since citizens deserve accountability when their rights and opportunities are affected. Unlike private corporations, governments carry a unique responsibility to maintain democratic legitimacy, which depends on visible fairness. Explainability ensures that AI supports, rather than erodes, the principles of justice and equality. Without it, even technically accurate systems can provoke backlash and mistrust, weakening the institutions they are meant to strengthen. The trade-off between simplicity and accuracy lies at the heart of debates about explainability. On one side, interpretable models like decision trees or linear regression provide clarity but may not capture the complexity of real-world data. On the other side, advanced models such as deep neural networks can deliver superior accuracy but often at the cost of opacity. For example, a simple model may predict loan defaults with decent accuracy and clear reasoning, while a deep learning model may perform better but offer little insight into its decisions. Choosing between them is not a purely technical question. It reflects values and priorities. In contexts like medical care or justice, the need for interpretability may outweigh small gains in accuracy. In less critical areas, raw predictive power may take precedence. Recognizing and managing these trade-offs is central to responsible AI deployment. Hybrid approaches attempt to reconcile the tension between interpretability and performance by combining the strengths of different models. One strategy is to use interpretable models for high-stakes decisions while employing deep learning for auxiliary tasks. Another is to pair black box systems with explainability tools that provide post-hoc insights. For example, a hybrid system in healthcare might use a neural network to detect subtle patterns in medical images, but rely on an interpretable model to communicate risk levels to clinicians. These approaches acknowledge that no single model can satisfy all demands, but that layered solutions can balance accuracy with clarity. Hybrids represent a pragmatic path forward, showing that the pursuit of explainability need not mean abandoning high-performance techniques, but rather integrating them thoughtfully into workflows where trust and understanding are paramount. Counterfactual explanations have become a valuable technique for making AI decisions more understandable. Instead of merely stating why a decision was made, counterfactuals show how small changes in input would have altered the outcome. For example, an AI system evaluating a loan application might explain, "Your application was denied, but approval would have been granted if your income were $5,000 higher or your debt ratio lower by 10%. This form of explanation empowers individuals by showing what adjustments might improve results, making AI outputs more actionable. Counterfactuals also clarify the decision boundaries of models, helping users and regulators understand their logic. By linking outcomes to tangible changes, counterfactual explanations humanize complex systems, turning abstract statistical processes into relatable insights. They shift explainability from passive justification toward proactive guidance. Sensitivity analysis is another interpretability technique that examines how robust AI models are to changes in inputs. By systematically adjusting variables, developers can observe how outputs shift, revealing whether models are overly sensitive to minor fluctuations. For instance, in a healthcare setting, sensitivity analysis might reveal that slight changes in lab results drastically alter diagnoses, raising questions about stability. In finance, it might show whether predictions about risk remain consistent under varied assumptions. Sensitivity analysis enhances trust by demonstrating that models are not fragile or arbitrary but resilient to reasonable variations. It also helps developers identify weaknesses and refine systems before deployment. By testing the stability of AI decisions, sensitivity analysis ensures that explainability is paired with reliability, reducing the likelihood of unpredictable or unfair outcomes in practice. The ethical implications of explainability extend beyond technical mechanics to questions of fairness, responsibility, and consent. Without transparency, individuals cannot give informed consent to AI-driven decisions that affect them. Lack of explainability also obscures accountability. If a biased outcome occurs, it becomes unclear whether the fault lies in the data, the model, or the deployment context. This lack of clarity undermines justice and weakens trust. Ethical frameworks emphasize that people deserve to know how decisions are made about their lives, whether in hiring, healthcare, or criminal justice. Explainability thus becomes a moral obligation as much as a technical one. By embedding interpretability into AI systems, developers honor principles of fairness, autonomy, and dignity, ensuring that technology serves people rather than treating them as passive subjects of inscrutable algorithms. Industry standards and guidelines are emerging to promote transparency and explainability as best practices. Frameworks like the European Union's Ethics Guidelines for Trustworthy AI and initiatives from organizations such as IEEE and ISO outline principles for developing explainable systems. These guidelines encourage developers to document datasets, disclose model limitations, and provide user-friendly explanations of outputs. Industry adoption of these standards helps create consistency, reducing the risks of fragmented or ad hoc practices. Standards also provide organizations with benchmarks to demonstrate accountability and build trust with regulators and consumers. While compliance may sometimes feel like a burden, these frameworks ultimately strengthen the credibility of AI technologies. They remind developers and companies that explainability is not an optional extra but an essential component of responsible innovation in a global marketplace. Regulatory requirements for explainability are becoming increasingly common, reflecting growing public demand for accountability. Laws such as the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation include provisions for a right to explanation when automated decisions affect individuals significantly. Financial regulators require transparency in lending and credit scoring, while healthcare laws emphasize patient safety through interpretability. These legal mandates ensure that organizations cannot deploy opaque systems in contexts where fairness and accountability are paramount. Compliance with regulatory standards also reduces legal risk and protects public trust. However, regulations must evolve alongside technology, as new forms of AI raise fresh questions about what counts as sufficient explanation. The rise of legal requirements underscores that explainability is no longer a matter of choice. It is becoming a duty enforced by law. Explainability tools in practice provide developers and organizations with concrete ways to interpret complex models. Software frameworks like SHAP, LIME, and integrated gradients have become standard tools for generating insights into black box models. These frameworks highlight which features influenced predictions, produce counterfactual scenarios, or create visualizations of model behavior. For example, SHAP values can show how each variable contributes to a loan approval decision, making results interpretable for regulators and customers alike. These tools are not perfect, as they often approximate rather than fully capture model logic, but they provide actionable insights that balance complexity with clarity. Their widespread use illustrates the growing recognition that interpretability must be built into everyday practice, not just considered at the policy level. Tools make explainability practical and scalable across industries. Challenges in achieving explainability remain significant, both technically and organizationally. Complex models resist easy interpretation, and approximations may fail to capture the full reasoning behind predictions. Organizations also face cultural barriers, as teams may prioritize accuracy and performance over clarity. Resource constraints can further limit the ability to invest in explainability tools or frameworks. Additionally, creating explanations that are both technically accurate and accessible to non-specialists is an ongoing struggle. These challenges highlight that explainability is not a single solution, but a continuous effort requiring collaboration across developers, ethicists, regulators, and users. Overcoming these obstacles is essential if AI is to maintain public trust and avoid being dismissed as inscrutable or unaccountable technology. User-friendly explanations represent one of the most important but overlooked aspects of explainability. Technical details may satisfy developers and regulators, but they often confuse or overwhelm everyday users. For example, a credit applicant denied a loan needs a simple explanation like, "Your income-to-debt ratio was too high," not a statistical breakdown of model coefficients. Tailoring explanations to the audience ensures that transparency achieves its purpose, helping people understand and respond to AI decisions. This requires careful design of communication strategies, balancing simplicity with accuracy. By focusing on user-friendly approaches, organizations make AI systems more inclusive, empowering people to engage with technology on their own terms rather than leaving them excluded by technical jargon. The future of explainable AI points towards systems that are inherently interpretable, reducing reliance on after-the-fact tools. Researchers are exploring models that combine high accuracy with built-in transparency, as well as developing more advanced interpretability frameworks for complex systems. Advances in visualization, natural language explanations, and user-centered design are making AI outputs clearer and more intuitive. The trajectory suggests a future where explainability is not seen as a compromise, but as an integrated feature of intelligent systems. As expectations for accountability grow, organizations that prioritize explainability will be better positioned to earn trust, comply with regulations, and avoid reputational harm. The future of AI is not only about intelligence but about clarity, and explainability will be central to achieving it. Explainability ultimately plays a defining role in building trustworthy AI. Transparency and interpretability allow systems to be scrutinized, errors to be corrected, and fairness to be ensured. Without them, AI risks being rejected as opaque and unaccountable, regardless of its performance. With them, AI can be embraced as a tool that enhances human decision-making while respecting rights and responsibilities. Trustworthy AI requires more than technical accuracy. It requires openness, accountability, and ethical commitment. Transparency and explainability provide the foundations on which trust is built, ensuring that intelligent systems serve not just efficiency, but also human values. They are not optional extras but essential pillars for the responsible future of artificial intelligence. Transparency and explainability together define whether AI will be embraced as a trusted partner in society. Transparency ensures openness about design, data, and deployment, while explainability ensures decisions are interpretable and communicable to those affected. Their importance spans industries, from healthcare and finance to law and governance, where accountability is critical. Yet achieving them involves trade-offs, technical challenges, and cultural shifts. Post-hoc tools, hybrid models, and user-centered explanations provide paths forward, while regulatory and ethical frameworks reinforce their necessity. For learners, the key takeaway is that transparency and explainability are not abstract ideals but practical requirements for AI's legitimacy. The future of AI will not only be judged by how well it predicts or performs, but by how clearly it can justify its reasoning. In that clarity lies the foundation of trust, adoption, and long-term societal benefit. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.